About the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Wednesday afternoon edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. There is no need to beat around the bush about what today's show is. We are making our final NCAA tournament preview and picks, okay? So if you listen to Sunday's show, I kept saying I'm not making picks on Sunday. We still need to find out injury news at Louisville and Duke and UConn and UCLA. Well, it's go time. The full bracket is officially tipping off on Thursday afternoon, about less than 24 hours from now. And so we're going to go region by region, just making our picks, okay? Preview picks of every single game in the bracket. I will give you my picks, my Final Four, my national championship. Nothing else on today's show. Unless something weird happens, then we'll address it as it comes. But today it is all about picks. By the way, 8 p.m. Eastern time, I should mention, we will have our behind-the-scenes tour of Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. So make sure, come back to the channel, 8 p.m. Eastern. Like that video, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Today, though, it is all bracket picks. And should mention, by the way, we will be back Thursday after the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed. Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support. And oh, by the way, we've got exactly 2 weeks left of March. We are full speed ahead to the Final Four, to the national championship. And I promise you, whether it's in Indy, whether it's after the Final Four, transfer portal, we are not going to stop talking college hoops until there is nothing left to talk about in April and May. So make sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications, share with a friend. We're at almost 72,000 subscribers. I think we could get to 73, 74, 75, but we cannot do it without your support. Speaking of support, people, what are you waiting for? It's time to sign up for the Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool. Okay, so listen, Survivor Pool has been open. All you got to do to join, just click that little QR code right there on the screen. Survivor really is, in my opinion, the new bracket. So everybody fills out a bracket, okay? Survivor, to me, is as fun, if not more fun. All you do is pick one team every single day for the NCAA tournament. Now, the catch is you cannot pick the same team twice. So say you are a fan that thinks that Michigan's going to win the championship, Arizona, Tennessee, whomever, you probably don't want to take them on the opening day of the tournament because you're going to need them later on. So it's fun. The prize pool is well over $1,000, and this is the best part. You get to compete against me. You get to compete against listeners of this pod, and the winner will take home over $1,000 in cash. All you got to do is click that QR code. If you're not watching, if you can't get to that QR code on the screen, also just go to my Twitter page at Aaron_Torres. Everything is pinned there. Again, the prize pool is well over $1,000 at this point. Winner will get $1,000 in cash prizes. So make sure to sign up now for the Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool. Again, just click that QR code to sign up. With that said, it is a busy Wednesday in the world of sports. It is Wednesday in the third week of March. You know what that means? We got an NCAA tournament to tip off. So today, no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, NCAA tournament. Let's make some picks. If you're new to the show, this is our official pick show. We are picking every single game all tournament long. You know, Matt's going to do the best to keep up on the screen if you're watching here on YouTube visually, but it's pretty straightforward. We go region by region, game by game, and make our picks. We'll start in the East, And for people who are new to this, Matt, unless you tell me otherwise, we'll pick every single game in the East, then go down to the South, then go down to the whatever. You get the point. We'll go every single region. I'll give you my picks. So let's start East region, where Duke is the number 1 seed. We deem this the bracket of death on Sunday when the bracket came out. Not only Duke in this region, but we also have St. John's as a 5 seed, Kansas is a 4 seed, Louisville as a 6, Michigan State as a 3, UCLA and UConn in the bottom part of the bracket in Philadelphia. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to give you my picks, every single one for this bracket. 116, Duke versus Siena. Listen, I'd love to give you some deep dive analysis, but I have Duke winning this game. Now, it is worth noting, John Shire did do a press media availability on Wednesday. Every coach and players are required to do press before the NCAA tournament. John Shire did say, do not expect Patrick Gongba in this game. I think that is a important theme and an important story to follow, as Duke was without 2 starters in the ACC tournament, and it sounds like they'll be down 2 starters to open the NCAA tournament. We will get to who they could face in the round of 32. Only other note here, Siena, coached by Syracuse legend Jerry McNamara, and it is looking increasingly likely that Jerry McNamara is going to be your next Syracuse basketball head coach. All reports are that Brian Hodgson, who we'll be talking about in a minute, who is from upstate New York, who is in Buffalo right now with the USF Bulls, will not be taking that job. And so I bring it up because it looks like Duke will be facing the future Syracuse basketball coach in Jerry McNamara. I have Duke winning that first game. 8-9 game, Ohio State versus producer Matt's TCU Horned Frogs. Okay, so for people who do not follow this, 2 teams, listen, it was funny. We talked so much about the bubble and so much negativity about the bubble, but I'll tell you what, Ohio State and TCU were really 2 of the few teams that played very well down the stretch. TCU won 5 of its final 6. Now, admittedly, it wasn't against the cream of the crop in the Big 12, but they knocked Cincinnati out of an at-large candidacy pool. They played Kansas very tough in the opening round of the Big 12 tournament before eventually losing. They're playing Ohio State, which played really well down the stretch. Ohio State, 4 straight wins to end the regular season, 3 straight wins, plus a win in the conference tournament. They nearly knocked off Michigan in that conference tournament. Feels like Ohio State's trendy. I'm just going to go ahead and take TCU. Listen, TCU, Jamie Dixon, he's been here before. He's done it. Jake Diebler, obviously, this is his first NCAA tournament as a head coach. I give him credit for rallying the troops and getting him there, getting the team there. But TCU is battle-tested. TCU as well, I think this is interesting. They do most of their damage in the paint. Ohio State isn't really good down low. Should mention, by the way, this is, if I'm not mistaken, the first game of the entire tournament that will tip off. So it will likely be the first result as well. I have TCU winning this game and beating Ohio State. Let's get to the second part of this region. These are Friday games in San Diego, so you got a little bit of time. St. John's versus Northern Iowa. Listen, I'll be transparent, and maybe, I don't know. I don't want to jinx anything, and I don't want St. John's fans mad at me. I think this is about as slam dunk of a first-round pick outside of maybe the 1s and 16s as you're going to get. Northern Iowa plays slow. Who cares? St. John's doesn't play fast. They're not trying to play a million possessions like Alabama or somebody like that. And you look at the team that they're playing in Northern Iowa, they don't start a player bigger than 6'8". Zuby Ejiofor might go for 40 and 20 in this game. Dylan Mitchell, that front court, I think is really going to dominate. I like St. John's to win this one comfortably. I really don't have a ton to add beyond that. I think St. John's rolls and cruises in this game. Second game in this region, again, this is Friday in San Diego. The people that are going to San Diego got their money's worth because you have Kansas, Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist, the winner of the WAC late on Saturday night. That was the game where the game-tying shot was a missed dunk. Cal Baptist survives. Listen, you look at Cal Baptist, good story, but another team, they don't have very much size. They have one guy basically that averages 20 a game. He's a 5'10" point guard. I think Melvin Council will take him out of the game, and I think Kansas wins this one pretty easily. So essentially chalk in that top quarter of the bracket, top half of the East bracket. I do have the 9 beating the 8. Let's get to the 6-11 game. This is another early tip-off in Buffalo. This is on Thursday. So we're going back to Thursday, East Regional. You can see it on the screen. Louisville the 6th seed, South Florida the 11th seed. I told you as soon as the bracket came out, this was one that I actually liked South Florida. I flip-flopped a little bit. I am going to take South Florida to win this game, okay? So, first of all, listen, I've been doing this long enough to know that when something weird is going on, sometimes you just know it. And so more than any analytic, any detail, any this, any that, you know why I'm taking South Florida to win this game? Something weird is going on at Louisville, and you cannot convince me otherwise. You look at the Louisville situation, Mikael Brown Jr., again, everybody had media availability that's playing on Thursday, on Wednesday. Pat Kelsey, Louisville, they all go to the podium. They say Mikael Brown Jr. is not available for either game this weekend. Then they have an open practice, and Mikael Brown Jr. is practicing with the team. And so I just bring it up because to me, when something is weird, when something feels weird, it probably is. South Florida has won like 11, 12 straight games. Brian Hodgson, I think we talked about this story earlier in the week, but he's from upstate New York. This is actually kind of an incredible story, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic or funny or anything with this. He was actually adopted. He was part of the foster care system in upstate New York. The man who adopted him, his now adopted father, has dementia. He has not seen Brian Hodgson coach a game as a head coach. He will be in the arena. I have a feeling pretty early on, Brian Hodgson and his father could become the story of the opening day of the NCAA tournament. Give me South Florida to upset Louisville. This is my first double-digit pick in this bracket. Let's keep it going. Winner of Louisville, South Florida will play the winner of Michigan State, North Dakota State. I could give you a million data points. I like Michigan State to win this game. I don't really know what else there is to say. North Dakota State is tough. They actually rebound pretty well for a school of their stature. They're obviously not recruiting a bunch of 5-stars. I think it's just a different deal when you're going up against a team like Michigan State with the physicality that they have. And I would say this too, like for all the crap that Jeremy Fears has gotten throughout the year, he is a very, very, very good point guard. And so to me, when I look at Michigan State, the better point guard, they're more physical down low. They really actually played pretty well down the stretch. They won 5 of their final 6 regular season games. The only game they lost was to Michigan on the road. They were very competitive in that game. I like Michigan State to win that game. Let's go to Friday, and these are Friday evening games in Philadelphia. First one, UCLA, UCF. I like UCLA. It is worth noting with UCLA, 2 of their starters were out of the Big Ten tournament with injury, Donovan Dent and Tyler Bilodeau. Donovan Dent met with the media in LA on Monday. So my hunch is that if there was anything wrong with him, they're not putting him out in front of the media. The same time, the opposite is true as well. Tyler Bilodeau, Mick Cronin said, was day-to-day. It's a knee thing, nothing that's going to keep him out of the tournament, but they're trying to manage swelling. So I think that's enough for them to get through UCF. We'll talk about UConn in a minute. UConn facing Furman. I know a lot of you know how I feel about UConn. I am not very happy with how UConn finished the regular season. I do not think they struggle with Furman. Give me UConn to survive Furman. And that is your opening round of the East region. Matt, unless I'm not understanding the technology, you can go ahead and pop up those winners right there. Duke, TCU, St. John's, Kansas, South Florida, Michigan State, UCLA, UConn in the round of 32. Let's keep it going, East region. Duke versus TCU. Listen, like I keep saying, TCU is a tough team. TCU nearly beat Kansas in the Big 12 tournament. TCU nearly beat Kansas at Fall Allen. TCU did beat Iowa State in the regular season. I think they can give Duke some trouble, especially if Patrick Gongba is not healthy. But until further notice, I am going to go ahead and take the Duke Blue Devils. Listen, Duke, I think they survive. I think Cam Boozer does Cam Boozer things. I don't know that there's a ton to add. They are the better team. But again, as these injuries linger, it is just something to monitor with Duke. I have Duke advancing to the Sweet 16, where they will face the winner of St. John's, Kansas. I don't know if this is an upset or not. I like St. John's, and I like it pretty convincingly. Listen, Kansas was not good down the stretch, and there is certainly going to be a conversation to be had about how Kansas, once Darren Peterson started playing every game in totality, the team kind of got worse. Listen, Darren Peterson has done a couple sit-down interviews. I'm glad he's telling his side of the story. I'm not here to pick on him. I hope he's healthy. I hope he gets better. But look at Kansas down the stretch. Got swept in Arizona, including a loss to Arizona State, which currently does not have a head coach. They go to the Big 12 tournament, barely survive TCU, then end up getting destroyed by Houston in the semifinals of that tournament. Kansas just really hasn't been a very good team about the last 2 or 3 weeks. St. John's has been. I like St. John's to advance to the Sweet 16, get out of the round of 32. This is where they lost last year. I know St. John's fans think this is a tough draw. I actually think it's a pretty nice matchup for them. I like St. John's to win that game. Bottom half of the bracket, South Florida versus Michigan State. Listen, I think either South Florida or Michigan or Louisville is a tough matchup for Michigan State. I know what you'll say. Those teams play fast. Those teams shoot a lot of threes, whatever. Michigan State is obviously an elite defensive team and an elite rebounding team. And when you are those two things, guess what ends up happening? It makes it tough for other teams to score that like to score on you. And so when you look at Michigan State, I just find it very hard to see the world where basically that South Florida can survive 2 straight games against that, or 2 straight games against power conference teams. They were very good this year, but here's the thing. They shoot a lot of threes. They actually don't make a huge percentage. They're not crazy big. And I think they're really well coached, but let's also not forget they came from a 1-bid league where there was nobody really comparable to them. So it wouldn't shock me if South Florida lost in round 1. I do have them losing in round 2 to Michigan State. And then, I have them losing in round 2 to Michigan State. Final game in the Sweet 16 or in the round of 32 to go to the Sweet 16, UConn versus UCLA. I'll be honest, I was a little worried this was a spot where UConn could get tripped up. I don't know that I see it for a few different reasons. One, UConn is just the healthier team, okay? UConn, for all of the concerns, Silas Demery, it looks like he's going to be okay. But remember what I just said about UCLA. Donovan Dent, UCLA star point guard, he is going to be okay. Again, he did media availability on Monday. I don't think Mick Cronin makes him available to the media if he is not healthy. The counter to that is what I said. Tyler Bilodeau, their starting power forward, one of their best players, we are told it is knee swelling that is the issue. Well, you have to play on a short turnaround, a quick turnaround against a physical UConn team, against Torres Reed. I just don't think that's the best spot for UCLA. They're also playing on the East Coast. Mick Cronin's not going to be happy about that. I do think UConn survives into the Sweet 16. So my 2 Sweet 16 games in the East, I will have Duke facing St. John's, Michigan State facing UConn. This in the East Regional. And now, of course, we head to Washington, D.C. for the 2 Sweet 16 games. First game, Duke St. John's. Again, we talked about this as the bracket of death earlier in the week. And we talked about this not only as the bracket of death, but we talked about it as what is the deal with Duke? To me, I don't know what every other college basketball podcast is saying. I only know what I talk about on this show. I can't listen to everybody else. I think how healthy is Duke is the biggest story to me, because when Duke was at full strength a few weeks ago, they beat Michigan. They were running through the ACC. They won at Michigan State. They beat Arkansas back in November. You go to right now, I don't know what I am getting from them. They don't have their starting point guard. And I think more importantly, Patrick Gongba, their starting center, I just don't think people realize how much pressure he takes off of Cam Boozer, right? Cam Boozer is a great player. But when he's got to go for 25 and 12 on offense and guard the other team's best player, and in this case, the other team's best player is Zuby Ejiofor, the Big East Player of the Year, that is a tough matchup. So look, if we knew today that Patrick Gongba was going to be available for the Sweet 16 100%, I might feel differently. But for people who don't follow, he's got a foot injury. Foot injuries linger. They don't necessarily get better in a week. St. John's fans, I'm taking St. John's. I know St. John's fans think they got the worst draw ever, and you don't want Kansas and Duke back-to-back. I think it's kind of a nice draw. I think you're getting Duke at the right time. This is not a John Shire stinks or John Shire is overrated. I just think this is a bad matchup against a physical St. John's team. I have St. John's advancing to the Elite Eight, where they will face, are you ready for this? I have them facing Michigan State knocking out UConn. Now, I know all my UConn people are going to crush me for this, and I get it. And for people who don't follow UConn or Michigan State on a day-to-day basis, they actually played in an exhibition in Hartford back in October or November, and UConn handled them pretty easily. Same time, though, the season has progressed, and I'm just here to tell you, UConn has been up and down all year. I think the draw they got early was kind of nice, but my biggest concern with UConn is pretty straightforward. Is one, physical teams, tough teams, and I'm just going to say it. I don't care if UConn fans get mad at me. I don't think UConn's very tough. Like, I just don't think UConn is very tough. And when you look at Michigan State, the one thing that Michigan State absolutely is that you cannot deny is that they are a tough team. And so all of a sudden, they're top 30 in field goal percentage defense. Now, I know UConn is right up there as well in the top 30. I get it. I'm not saying that UConn doesn't do some things well. But at the end of the day, you look at UConn's struggles. They have struggled against elite teams defensively to generate good offense. Look at all three St. John's games. Look at a couple of these other games in the Big East against physical, tough teams like a Georgetown, like a whomever. And I know they just beat Georgetown in the round of 30 or in the Big East semifinals. I don't care. By the way, who gave UConn a ton of trouble in the Big East? Seton Hall. I know UConn beat them twice, but they gave UConn trouble twice. They are another team that is one of the best field goal percentage teams in college basketball. And so when I look at this matchup for UConn, I just think it's kind of a bad matchup. They have struggled with perimeter defense. Jeremy Fears is the best point guard they will have faced probably since December, since November. I don't know. I like Michigan State to win this game and advance to the Elite Eight. It is worth noting, by the way, last year, I kind of was convinced that Michigan State wasn't very good. They end up going to the Elite Eight. Last year, they lost to Auburn. This year, I think Michigan State advances to the Elite Eight, where they will face Rick Pitino and St. John's. So how about that? Rick Pitino and St. John's. By the way, why is the chat so quiet? Why are you guys so quiet? Get in the chat, talk, chat, tell me why I'm wrong. But East Regional Final. This is a Sunday regional. This will probably be the game in the lead up to the CBS 60 Minutes. Two Hall of Famers. If I remember correctly, what was it, about 2015? Louisville and Michigan State met in the Elite Eight. Michigan State goes to the Final Four. Of course, Rick Pitino was at Louisville at the time. I think Rick Pitino gets his revenge. I have St. John's winning the East Regional. Listen, this bracket is tough. I like their matchups, and I just like the timing of when they are getting a really good Duke team. They're playing Duke. Duke is down 2 starters. We'll see if Patrick Gongba's back. I'm not sold that he will be. And even if he is, it's a tough ask with Zuby Ejiofor. St. John's isn't perfect, but they've won 19 of 20. They're playing as well as anybody. And it's kind of crazy, right? Because, and we talked about this on Selection Sunday, is when teams get seeded, you have to seed them based on the totality, their full body of work. But name me 5 teams that are playing better than St. John's right now. 19 of 20 that they've won. They beat UConn 2 out of 3 times. They beat everybody else. They're basically unbeaten except for that one bad night in Hartford since, about the second week of January. I have St. John's winning the East and advancing. St. John's fans, you'll have to help me. Is this your first Final Four since 85? I believe it is. I have St. John's as my East Regional champion. All right. That went longer than I thought it would. Surprise, surprise. So what we'll do, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. When we come back, we're going to head down South Florida's region, Florida, Houston, in Houston. Surprise, surprise. I'm not saying that's how I have it, but what I am saying is those are the 2 top seeds. We'll take a quick break, come back, talk South region. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauli Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauli Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauliPuffs.com. That's CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauliPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauli Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauli Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Before we get the chat's finally getting going, Squantoon says, I have the exact same East region as Torres. Chat, am I cooked? Well, I can't get into the chat, but yeah, you're probably cooked. I would not feel great. Although, I actually like the matchups for St. John's. I actually, when the bracket came out, that was one of the things that I felt most confident with. Gorkle Gorky says, 11-game win streak for USF. They won't beat Louisville, even with no Mikal Brown. I'll say this, the Louisville thing, when you actually look at the stats, it's not a terrible matchup for Louisville, but sometimes you just have to look at not only the stats, but also just the vibe. The vibes just seem off on Louisville. Listen, I like Pat Kelsey. I want them to be good. I have no issue with Louisville being awesome. I'm just saying I don't know. Just something feels off for Louisville. I do think South Florida goes ahead and pulls off the upset. By the way, chat is starting to pick up. Make sure to click that like button. We're at 13 likes. We need to get to at least 150 before the end of the show, so make sure to do that. Also, speaking of things you need to do, if you're going to games this weekend, what you need to do is check out SeatGeek. It is America's #1 ticketing app, over 28 million downloads. And what I love about SeatGeek, pretty straightforward. Two things I love about SeatGeek. The first thing is every ticket on the app is rated 1 through 10. Gives you a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means maybe you want to go ahead and stay away. But you know what I really love about SeatGeek? They take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. If you go to SeatGeek.com or the SeatGeek app and you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, it gets you $20 off your first purchase. Could be the ticket to any game. If you're going to the Buffalo Regional, the Tampa Regional, the San Diego Regional, SeatGeek app, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. By the way, it's not just college basketball. Maybe your team stinks. Maybe they get knocked out early. Maybe you want to go do something else. Any ticket on the app, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, $20 off. Should mention it is your first purchase. If you've already made a purchase on SeatGeek, just use a different email. You can still use the promo code Torres to get $20 off. Really quickly, before we get to the South Regional, I should mention again, Matt, our Survivor Pool, our Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool. If you have not signed up, what are you waiting for? Tournament starts tomorrow. So Survivor, it's the new way to do things. Listen, brackets are out, Survivor is in. And Survivor, if you've never done it, it's really, really, really fun. All you need to do, what you need to know about Survivor is pretty straightforward, is that all you have to do every single day is pick one game, just one winner, okay? The only catch is that you cannot pick the same team twice. So if you like Arizona to win the championship, if you like Michigan to win the national championship, if you like Louisville, if you like whoever, don't take them in the first day. And that's the strategy behind it. Who do you take? When do you take them? How do you use all your teams? So go ahead and sign up for our Survivor Pool. You can sign up through the day tomorrow. Obviously, once the games get going, you need to get your picks in and get going. But you can enter up to 10 times, minimum $1,000. The more people we get signed up, the bigger the prize pool is going to be. But if you sign up now, I can guarantee you're going to get $1,000 cash prize if you win. Again, All you got to do is click that QR code, Survivor, compete against me. It's $25 to enter. You can enter as many times as you want. And oh, by the way, the winner will get $1,000 in cash prize. Let's keep it going with the South Regional. We just did the East Regional. If you missed it, a little bit of a surprise. Let's go down south where the Florida Gators are the number 1 overall seed. Okay, so Florida, they are actually, we don't know their opponent as of yet. They play the winner of Prairie View versus Lehigh. That game will tip off, about an hour from now, about an hour and a half from now, something like that. I'm going to go ahead and take Florida. Don't know if there's a ton to add there, but I do like Florida. Clemson versus Iowa, kind of the battle of the mid. I'll be perfectly honest. Clemson went 2-5 down the stretch. Also, Iowa State went 2-5. Clemson went 2-5 down the stretch. Iowa lost 6 of its final 8. Transparently, I don't feel great about either of those teams. I'll go ahead and take Clemson. The Iowa thing is weird. Remember, Ben McCollum comes from Drake, and he had won a bunch of national championships at the D2 level before that, and you kind of just thought it would kind of keep rolling. Bennett Sturts would be awesome. It hasn't really translated that way. Outside of Bennett Sturts, they don't have much on offense. They've been struggling down the stretch. They took some bad losses down the stretch as well. Lost to Maryland, which is terrible. Lost early in the conference tournament to Ohio State. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that Clemson had the greatest wins, but Clemson, to their credit, did get 2 wins at the ACC tournament, beating both Wake Forest and North Carolina. I have Clemson winning the 8-9 matchup. Vandy McNeese. So a lot of people, it seems to be trendy to take McNeese. McNeese, of course, 3rd straight NCAA tournament. The first 2 were under Will Wade. Will Wade has been replaced by Bill Armstrong. Will Wade was knocked out of the tournament on Tuesday night. Bill Armstrong and McNeese are still alive. They will face Vandy in Oklahoma City tomorrow, Thursday. Listen, I could go on and on. It feels like McNeese is a trendy upset pick. I just don't see it. First of all, McNeese's best player is a freshman, so it's what we talk about with freshmen all the time. Do you have the guys around you? Because freshmen on that big stage, it's just tough to see them elevating and them rising. On top of it, what I find kind of interesting, McNeese is kind of similar to Vandy. A lot of guards. They're not very big. They don't rebound the ball great. I just don't. I think Vandy and McNeese are kind of like, there is a type of team that I would be worried about Vandy playing in the opening round. I just don't see it. Go ahead, give me Vandy to win this game. I think it's actually relatively comfortably. Nebraska versus the 13 seed Troy. Nebraska, we know the history here. Nebraska is going for their first ever NCAA tournament win. Troy, of course, was in the tournament last year. There's really strong rumblings that Troy head coach Scott Cross will be the next head coach at Georgia Tech. So probably in just a day or two, potentially, he'll be an ACC head coach. I like Nebraska. Listen, I don't think they're great. I think Nebraska kind of faltered down the stretch. They started 20-0, 6-6 in their final 12, lost their Big Ten tournament opener to Purdue. I just don't see them struggling with Troy. I think they advance and they win comfortably in that opening round. Let's get to the bottom half of this bracket. These games are in Greenville, South Carolina. And I'll tell you, when the bracket came out, I gave you 2 games right away that felt like they had major upset potential. One was South Florida, Louisville. I stuck with that one. The other one was North Carolina, VCU. VCU has won 16 of 17. And when the bracket came out, I said, I think that's an upset that I like. I've taken a day to reflect. Maybe Hubert Davis will let me down. I'm going to go ahead and take North Carolina to win this game, though. The bottom line is, listen, I think I said on the show on Sunday, I said something to the effect of like, the wind has come out of the sails of the North Carolina program since Caleb Wilson got that second season-ending injury. I don't think that's really fair to say in hindsight. They were within 1 point of Duke in the second half before Duke went on that big run in their second game. They lost the conference tournament opener to Clemson by 1 point. I don't know that that's falling apart down the stretch, so I will take North Carolina to win. I think Henry Visar, who, by the way, did you see Henry Visar against Clemson? That was one of the days that I was traveling, so I didn't get to watch this game closely. Went back and watched it. 28 points, 17 rebounds for Henry Visar. I think he plays a big part of a North Carolina win over VCU. I think they get the win. After that, Illinois versus Penn. We know the story here. Fran McCaffrey was the Iowa head coach forever. He's now at Penn. They get to the NCAA tournament in year one. TJ Power, who began his career at Duke, played at Virginia. He's now at Penn, goes for 40 in the conference championship game. I just don't think it matters against Illinois. You look at Penn, great story, but I just think this is a very tough matchup for them. They are a team, this is Penn that we're talking about, that shoots the three ball well, but don't necessarily take a lot of threes. And I just think over the course of a game, I think that physicality from Illinois will wear down Penn. Give me Illinois to win that game as well. Keeping it going, the final part of the region, very interesting clash of styles in the St. Mary's Texas A&M game. I think we talked about this on the Sunday bracket reveal show. But when you talk about two teams that just play completely different in college basketball, we know about Buckyball. We know about Bucky McMillan wanting to get up and down, back and forth, play a million possessions. Then you have St. Mary's that in terms of total tempo is towards the bottom of college basketball. They play super slow. They take a lot of time off the clock. And so the question becomes which style wins. I don't know if this is a surprise or not. I'm going to go ahead and take Texas A&M. It's not an SEC thing, but when you look at St. Mary's, you know who they struggled with in their conference play more than they struggled with Gonzaga. They actually struggled with Santa Clara, who obviously is going to be playing Kentucky in the opening round, but Santa Clara plays similarly to this Texas A&M team. Santa Clara gets up, they're super athletic, they shoot a lot of threes. St. Mary's struggled with that style of play, so give me Texas A&M. And in the 2-15 matchup, if you got strong takes on Houston versus Idaho that don't involve Houston winning by 1 billion, feel free to share them. I don't know that I do, though. I have Houston winning this game pretty convincingly. So, first round is set. Round of 32 now. Let's get to it. Top of the bracket, Florida versus Clemson in a 1-8 game. Again, if you got bold takes, go ahead and give them to me. I like Florida to win this game. I know Florida didn't look great in the SEC tournament. They had also won 20 of 22 coming into the SEC tournament. I think they got humbled a little bit, did not play well in Nashville. I think that's going to stick with them going into this tournament. And I think you look at Clemson. I mean, Clemson wants to be physical. They want to be tough. They want to slow things down. Problem is, when your whole motto is physicality and toughness, and the other team is just as big, just as tough as just as physical, that's a tough way to live things. I have Florida advancing to the Sweet 16, where we will get an SEC semifinal rematch. I do have Vandy beating Nebraska in the round of 32. I have been out on Nebraska. I still am out on Nebraska. And I do think that when I look at Nebraska, I just think that it's a tough matchup for them. Vandy gets up and down, shoots a lot of threes. Tyler Tanner, I think, is going to be the best player on the floor. I think Vandy's playing really good basketball right now. They ran into a good Arkansas team in the SEC championship game, but Vandy, remember, they beat Tennessee convincingly. They beat Florida convincingly. I have Vandy advancing to the Sweet 16. Bottom half of the bracket, I went from North Carolina losing to VCU on Selection Sunday to North Carolina beating Illinois to go to the Sweet 16. I know I'm crazy. Listen, Carolina, I know they don't have Caleb Wilson, but again, before Caleb Wilson's second injury, they were actually playing very well in the lead up to what we thought was his return. And so you look at this matchup, and listen, I like Illinois, but Illinois themselves has not been playing great basketball of late. You look at the back half of the schedule, like North Carolina, they lost the first game of the Big Ten tournament. They went 2-2 in their last 4. And there's just something about them that just hasn't quite felt right here over the last couple weeks. I know Keaton Wagler is going to be the best player on the floor, but the counter to that is that, Illinois has a lot of physicality in the paint. Do they have anybody that can handle Henry Visar? I don't know. And also North Carolina shoots the crap out of the ball as well. Go ahead and give me North Carolina to beat Illinois to advance to the Sweet 16. And then bottom half of the bracket, everything's bigger in Texas, including round of 32 showdowns, apparently. Houston versus A&M. There's no shocker here. Houston's going to win by 1 million. Congrats to Bucky McMillan. I think in year one, getting to the tournament and winning a game is a huge success. Remember, Bucky McMillan didn't get the job. He was the last power conference coach to get a job last year, scrambled in the portal, did a good job. I think their season ends there. So Sweet 16 is set. We have Florida versus Vandy, top half of the bracket. North Carolina versus Houston in the bottom half of the bracket. Florida versus Vandy, the rematch from the SEC tournament. Can we see a potential upset again? Vandy just beat Florida last weekend. Yeah, I don't see it. Listen, Todd Golden clearly is an emotional coach. His teams play emotionally with a chip on their shoulder. You don't think they're going to be fired up to face Vandy again for a second time after what Vandy just did to them? Especially, by the way, Todd Golden's one of the few coaches that was very publicly talking about wanting to win a conference tournament championship. I think most coaches in this era are kind of like, listen, if we're going to have to play it, we're going to go to win it. But it kind of feels like most coaches are kind of in the, hey, if we can get a couple extra days of rest and we don't have to play 3 games in 3 days or 4 days in 4 days, that's fine. Todd Golden was very vocal about wanting to win that tournament. So I think they come back out, chip on their shoulder. They take care of Vandy pretty easily. They advance to the Elite Eight, where we will have a rematch of last year's national championship game. I have Houston over North Carolina. Don't know what there is to say. Houston, I don't think Houston is quite as good as they were a year ago. But these games, remember, Sweet 16, Elite Eight are in the city of Houston, which brings us to our South Regional Final. And I'll tell you this is going to be a topic. The South Regional is in the city of Houston, okay? So Houston, the way NCAA tournaments work is this. Every city has a host school, right? So if Philadelphia, for example, is hosting the first round, the host school might be Villanova or LaSalle or whoever. Well, and I should mention too, if the host school is in the tournament, they can't play at that site, okay? So as an example, like the years that the NCAA tournament is at Rupp Arena, last year was at Rupp Arena, Kentucky is the host, they can't play in that site. Well, I bring it up because I believe it's Rice that is the host of the Elite Eight and Sweet 16 in Houston. Houston is allowed to play within those city limits. Now, I don't love that they're allowed to be in a bracket within the city region, but these are the rules. So we get an NCAA tournament championship game rematch from a year ago, Florida against Houston in the city of Houston. That said, I don't think either of these teams is as good as last year. I do think Florida is better. It's so funny, right? And this is why, by the way, I don't do big, bold proclamations on this team's going to make the Sweet 16. This team's going to make the Elite Eight. Because I need to see a bracket. I was not high on Houston coming into this tournament, but I like the draw. I don't see anybody that can beat them until that Elite Eight. Give me Florida in the Elite Eight. Florida to make the Final Four. Second straight Final Four for the Gators. They beat Houston to advance out of the South Regional. Matt, should I take another break? Let's take another break. I need a little quick coffee swig here, a little bit of water. We'll take a break. We'll come back, answer your questions. We will get to the West Regional. Arizona's the number 1 seed, a potential, Sweet 16 matchup with Arkansas and Wisconsin. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Tell you what, let's jump right in to the West Regional. Such an interesting site, such an interesting matchup. Let's go ahead and dive in. And let's start, obviously, number 1 seed in the West, Arizona. It's funny, I haven't looked at odds. I would assume Arizona's got to be the favorite at this point. Duke's a little bit banged up, whatever. They are playing the Long Island Sharks. Long commute from Long Island to San Diego. I said it the other day. St. John's is also in the San Diego Regional. I almost half wonder if St. John's and LIU take the same charter. We'll find out probably in the coming days. These are Friday games, and I do like Arizona to beat LIU to open this region. Next game, very interesting. So Villanova, Utah State. So I was thinking about this. So first of all, Villanova is kind of a wild story, right? They basically, if you look at their schedule, it's kind of crazy. Villanova finished the regular season 24-8 overall. So Villanova went 0-5 against UConn and St. John's, the only other 2 Big East teams that made the NCAA tournament. They lost to BYU and Michigan in the out of conference. And so I just bring it up because basically their entire resume is beating crappy teams. Destroyed the bad part of the Big East. Let's see. They finished, taking out the conference tournament, finished 15-5 in the Big East, which means they finished 15-1 against everyone other than UConn and St. John's. So I was a little bit down on them. Then I went and looked at Utah State's resume, and I said, wait a second. Now everybody's just, auto-picking Utah State into the round of 32. And I was thinking about this. So everybody talks about Miami of Ohio, how they didn't play a single power conference team all year. Guess how many power conference teams Utah State played? They played 0 power conference teams as well. They did beat VCU, who's a tournament team. They did, by the way, lose to South Florida, which is kind of interesting. But the Mountain West was a 1-bid league. They are the only team from the Mountain West that's in there. They finished 15-5. They took some weird losses. They lost to UNLV, who's not very good. They lost to Nevada, who's not very good. And I just sit there and say, what? I don't really know what's that different about their resume from Miami of Ohio. 0 wins against power conference teams. The difference is they took a bunch of losses. So I bring all that up. That's a long-winded way of me saying I think these are 2 flawed teams. I'm going to go ahead and take Villanova. I don't feel great about it. I wouldn't bet it. But in our survivor pool, which, Matt, you can pop up the little QR code, sign up for our survivor pool right now, right there, right now. Sign up for our survivor pool. All you got to do is click, compete against me, $1,000 cash prize. But I don't know that I'd take Villanova in the survivor pool, but I'm going to take them here. Wisconsin High Point. Okay, so these are Portland games. First of all, this is insane. This game is tipping off at 10:50 a.m. local time in Portland. Who put together this schedule? Who put it together? Wisconsin and High Point. I'll tell you this, this was one that I kind of on Sunday just kind of auto put Wisconsin in without thinking about it. High Point's a really good team, 30-4 overall. They've lost 1 game since the middle of December, lost 1 game in their conference tournament. And I do think it's worth noting a couple things. Made the NCAA tournament a year ago. They shoot a lot of threes. They score a lot of points. The problem is that's kind of the same as Wisconsin, which shoots a lot of threes, scores a lot of points. Wisconsin has those 2 really good guards, John Blackwell and why am I blanking on the kid's name? Nick Boyd. So I will take Wisconsin to win. This feels like it is very much in the 5-12 upset realm. It's just not something I'm going to pick because, whatever, it's a crapshoot. Counter to that, Arkansas versus Hawaii. I looked into Hawaii. I don't really see the pathway for Hawaii to win. Knock on wood. I know Arkansas fans are going to say, you're going to jinx us, Torres, blah, 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 blah. Arkansas having to fly west, after the SEC tournament on Sunday. Maybe they come out a little tired, a little jet lagged. I mean, their game will be probably about 1 p.m. local time or so. I mean, if you factor in the Wisconsin game is at 10:50 local time. But you look at Hawaii. The one thing I will say about Hawaii, Hawaii's bigger than I thought. They have a kid named Isaac Johnson who began his career at Oregon and then played at Utah State. They do have size. That is something that Arkansas obviously has struggled with a little bit this year. I don't know that they do anything well enough to beat Arkansas. I do think Arkansas gets the opening round win over Hawaii. That is a Thursday game. Those are Thursday games in Portland. Let's get to more Thursday games in Portland. And how about this? BYU versus Texas. We all watched, or many of you watched, the opening round game, the first 4 game between Texas and NC State. Tremont Mark goes off. I got to be honest. So this was one of the toughest picks for me, and I'll tell you why. I have liked Texas's personnel all year. Jordan Pope is good. Tremont Mark is good. Vocatitis is good. Dalen Swain is going to be a first-round NBA draft pick. The thing about Texas, which was weird, they could never put it together all season, and even that NC State game, they almost blew it. So I went back and forth on this game. BYU, of course, is coming off 2 wins at the Big 12 tournament. AJ DeBonsa was all Big 12 tournament first team, despite not playing after Thursday. But I looked into BYU a little bit more. I know they won 3 out of their final 4, including in the season finale against Texas Tech. I'm going to take Texas in this one, and I'll tell you why. I think it's a bad matchup for BYU. You look at BYU, Vocatitis, they don't have a true 7-footer. That's been an issue for them all season long. Texas's guards are big, which I think could be an issue for Rob Wright. And so I look at this game. Yeah, DeBonsa could go for 35. Are they going to have enough around him? And even in those games that they won, there was like weird stuff. Like one game, Kennard Davis went for 20. He hasn't gone for 20 all year. He didn't kind of back it up the following game. You go back to the Texas Tech win. They were down at halftime. I just think this has been a disappointing year for BYU. Texas worries me from the perspective of they really haven't put 2 good games together all season. But I'm going to go ahead and take Texas to pull off the 6-11 upset in this game. I do have Texas winning this one against BYU. Also in the Portland Regional, so this will be one of the late night games, Gonzaga versus Kennesaw State. I'm going to go ahead and take Gonzaga. Kennesaw State, by the way, finished like 10-10 in their league. They finished like 6th or 7th in Conference USA overall. I don't see really an easy pathway for them to win that game. So go ahead and give me Gonzaga to win that game. Bottom part of the bracket, okay? These are games in St. Louis, Missouri. This was one of those things that jumped out to me the second the bracket came out, right? We talked about this on Sunday's show. Miami, what do you get for finishing in 3rd place in the ACC? Congratulations. You got to go play Missouri in the state of Missouri in St. Louis. I know what people will say. They're a 10 seed. Who cares? Whatever. I have Missouri winning this game. I just do. I think Mark Mitchell is going to be the best player on the floor. Miami does have good bigs. Malik Renew. Shelton Henderson was a former 5-star who was supposed to go to Duke. He followed Jay Lucas to Miami. I think he could be kind of an X factor. But you look at Missouri, they were kind of good all year long in a league where there were the most NCAA tournament teams out of any league in college basketball. I mean, you look at Missouri, they won at Rupp Arena. You look at Missouri, they beat Tennessee late in the season. You look at Missouri, they beat Vandy late in the season. You look at Missouri, they won at Texas A&M. You look at Missouri, they took care of business against some other teams, throughout the year. They beat Florida early in the season. I think Missouri is a pretty good team. I have Missouri winning this game and advancing to the round of 32. Where they're going to face Purdue. Purdue opens with Queens University. Queens in their first NCAA tournament, in their first year eligible for the NCAA tournament. I mentioned this on the show the other night. Their coach at Queens, his name is Grant Leonard, likes to wear ugly Christmas sweaters on the sideline, so we'll see what he has in store for the opening round of the tournament. I have Purdue winning that game, though. So let's get to the round of 32 in the West Regional. Arizona against Villanova. That's going to be a bloodbath. Listen, Villanova, I think whoever gets Arizona in the round of 32, that's just going to be a tough matchup. I don't think either team has anything close to the size and physicality to match them. I have Villanova winning in the opening round. I will have Arizona winning this game. I do have Arkansas versus Wisconsin. Very similar teams, good backcourt, shoot a lot of threes. The front court is more questionable. Just give me the team with the best player in Darius Acuff. I like Arkansas. Acuff has been unbelievable, but it's really the other guys that have stepped up. Billy Richmond has been awesome. Malik Thomas was great during the SEC tournament run. Listen, I don't think it's a surprise. Trevin Brazile will be the X factor for Arkansas in this NCAA tournament. If he plays like he did in Nashville, they have a chance to do some real damage. If he does not play like he did in Nashville, and he's been up and down his entire career, they could lose to Wisconsin. But I will have Arkansas beating Wisconsin in the West. Let's keep it going. I have Texas and Gonzaga. I'll be real. I don't think Gonzaga is the worst matchup for Texas. Again, Texas has a very nice team. Vokatitis, as I said, down low. Dalen Swain is going to be the best NBA prospect on that floor. Tremont Mark is a veteran. Jordan Pope is a veteran. With that said, though, what did I say about Texas a minute ago? They are inconsistent. You can't get 2, 3, 4 great games out of them. They were up, 6 or 7 with a minute to go against NC State and almost blew it. I like Texas to play tough, but Gonzaga to win that game. And then in the Purdue-Missouri matchup, it was funny. The night the bracket came out, I said, how could you put Purdue in St. Louis against Missouri? I'll say this, Purdue fans, we've had our differences in the past, but they were largely pretty polite in all the comment sections that I saw, basically saying, like, it really isn't that far of a drive for us either, if we're being perfectly honest. So there will be a lot of Purdue fans there with a lot of Missouri fans. I have Purdue winning that game and advancing to the Sweet 16. So Sweet 16 games in San Jose, number 1 Arizona, number 4 Arkansas, number 3 Gonzaga, number 2 Purdue. Arizona versus Arkansas. So I'm going to be real. I think there is quite literally one team that I don't know that Arkansas can beat in this bracket. Because Arkansas, listen, they can play with anybody. And they almost, they played Duke tough on Thanksgiving. I think they would match up well with Michigan because Michigan doesn't really shoot the 3 ball well. Florida would be a tough matchup for them. You wanted to avoid Arizona as long as you could. I don't know if you can beat Arizona. I'm not saying you can't because Arizona's lost twice, but we all know Arkansas has struggled with physicality and toughness in the paint. No one is tougher than Arizona. Shout out my boy Mike Luke. Shout out girth. There's no girthier team in college basketball than Arizona. I don't know that Arkansas can match up with them. Listen, for Arkansas to win, it's got to be an Acuff 35-plus point game. It's got to be Malik Thomas hitting 4 or 5 threes. There is a pathway, but that is one of the worst matchups that they could have found. I do have Arizona winning that game and advancing to the Elite Eight, where they will face, how about this? The Gonzaga Bulldogs. Okay, so for people who do not remember, Tommy Lloyd, the Arizona coach, was a longtime Gonzaga assistant. It was actually in his contract to be the coach in waiting at Gonzaga. The Arizona offer comes. Even Mark Few says you can't turn that one down. Go, good luck. Hope to never see you again in a positive way, like on the court. But I like Gonzaga's I like their matchup with Purdue. Gonzaga, with Graham Ike down low, I think that kind of neutralizes some of what Purdue does in the paint. I think Gonzaga's guards are really good. I like Gonzaga to advance past Purdue, where they will face Arizona in the Elite Eight. And I'll be real, I think that's a terrible matchup for I think that's a terrible matchup for Gonzaga. I think it's a great matchup for Tommy Lloyd in Arizona. Listen, how could it not be, right? I mean, think about it. These two programs are modeled after each other. What Arizona is doing is largely what Gonzaga was doing, 6, 7, 8 years ago, recruiting the same types of players, playing the same type of way. But Arizona's in the Big 12. Tommy Lloyd took that blueprint, I think took it up, and I can't say took it up a notch because Gonzaga played in 2 national championship games. I have Arizona winning this. I have Arizona making its first Final Four since 2001. I'd say congrats, Arizona fans, but I don't know if you want my congrats until the confetti's actually falling in San Jose. I do have Arizona winning the West. All right, let's get to the Midwest region. Before we do, Matt, one more time, let's tell the people about our Aaron Torres pod Survivor pool. Okay, so listen, I've been trying to tell you guys, Survivor, it's the new NCAA tournament bracket. Okay, we've all filled out brackets. It's fun. But Survivor, it's even better. Survivor, it's simple. This is all you got to do. First of all, to enter, just click the QR code on the screen. But if you've never played Survivor, this is all you need to know. Okay, with Survivor, you don't have to pick the whole bracket. You don't have to remember how far did I have Gonzaga going, and what about Purdue, and what about St. Mary's, and I forget what I did with this team. Survivor, all you have to do is pick one team to win every single day. The catch is you can't pick the same team twice. So if you like Arizona to go to the Final Four, if you like Purdue, if you like Michigan, if you like UConn, it doesn't matter who you like. You got to save some teams for later in the tournament, because once you use a team once, you cannot use them again. It is so fun. It is so competitive. And here's the best part. 1, you get to compete against your boy Torres. 2, we officially have $1,000 cash prize. So go ahead and sign up now. If you click that QR code, you can sign up to enter Compete Against Me, $1,000 cash prize. By the way, you can enter more than once. We've had people enter 2, 3, 4 different entries to give yourself a better chance at winning. But again, all you got to do is click that QR code, sign up to Compete Against Me, $1,000 cash prize to the winner. Compete against Torres this March. I'll tell you what, you're probably going to win, because we'll see what happens. Anyway, click that QR code, sign up. Let's get some people in there. Again, we're well over $1,000 in a cash prize. We can get to 2,000. We just need more of you to sign up. So go ahead and do that. All right, let's wrap. We got one more. And by the way, if you are watching live, you can click the QR code. You can also click it. It's pinned at the top of the chat. And if you're watching on replay, it is at the bottom of the chat. Just click that link there. All right, let's get to the old Midwest Regional. Interesting region. Michigan, the 1 seed. Iowa State, the 2 seed. Matt, you could pop up that bracket. Let's start talking about it. Michigan plays Howard. Congrats to Howard. First ever NCAA tournament win in the first 4. They beat UMBC. I don't see them getting win number 2 against Michigan. I have Michigan advancing. Georgia and St. Louis is certainly an interesting one. On the one hand, you got a Georgia team that's actually playing really well. On the other hand, you got a St. Louis team that lost 4 of its last 8. They started, I want to say 25-1, maybe 24-1, I think it was, went 5-5 in their last 8. But there's a couple variables here. One, Georgia is coached by Mike White. I do not trust that guy further than I can throw him. The other thing that I think is worth noting as well, Georgia, if you look at their team this year, the thing about Georgia, when you really break it down, they shoot a lot of threes. They make a fair amount. St. Louis shoots a lot of threes as well, but St. Louis also has one of the top 3-point defenses in all of college basketball. And so this is one where I actually think the matchup favors St. Louis. It's crazy. St. Louis is one of the more athletic teams that I've seen. Now, Georgia is equally as athletic, but I don't even think it's a bad matchup. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm going to take St. Louis. I don't feel great about either one of those teams, but I do like St. Louis a little bit more. I think they're certainly better coached, and then it just becomes a question of, can they execute enough? I have St. Louis winning that game. Let's get down to some Friday games in Tampa. Texas Tech versus Akron. So this one's crazy because Texas Tech and Akron, this is the quad, if you will. It's not a region, but it's a quad where these teams love to shoot 3-pointers. Okay. So we're going to talk about Alabama in a minute, but Texas Tech is one of the top 30 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball in terms of total attempts. Akron takes a ton of 3-pointers. They're ranked 31st in the country in 3-point attempts. So expect a lot of threes, expect a lot of points. The difference between these two teams is that Texas Tech is actually a very good 3-point defense team. And so because of it, I do like Texas Tech to win this game. Listen, would it shock me if there was an upset here? It wouldn't. Akron, they're in the MAC. They obviously play in the same conferences as Miami of Ohio. Akron only lost 1 game in the MAC all year. It was to Miami of Ohio. They're a very good team in their own right. They just never got the credit for it because Miami of Ohio was so good in their conference. So it wouldn't stun me to see Akron pull off the upset with Texas Tech playing without JT Toppin, but I will take Texas Tech to win this game. Let's get back to the other game in that bracket, the Alabama Crimson Tide. New definition of roll tide roll this week, if you know what I mean. You can figure that out. Aiden Holloway, it's obvious he's not going to be playing in this game. He's suspended by the school. We talked about it on yesterday's show. It's officially above Nate Oates' head. It's officially above Greg Burns' head. So you're losing a 17-point-a-game score. I think the thing that stands out about this to me, Hofstra, the more that I dug into them, probably a little bit of a tougher mid-major matchup than I was expecting. You know, a lot of these mid-major teams, they're small. They don't play with a lot of size. Hofstra has a couple 7-footers. They're pretty athletic. They're a great defensive team, and they play really slow. Well, how do you slow down a team that wants to shoot a lot of threes and get up and down? You play slow, you take care of the basketball, and you rebound. So I could actually see the world where without Aiden Holloway, Alabama wins this game. But I am going to take Alabama to win. Nate Oates, since he has been at Alabama, 5 NCAA tournaments, the only time that he has lost in the opening round, it was a game in which, if you remember, Javon Quinterly, this is sad, but Javon Quinterly got hurt. They were in control of a game, I believe it was against Notre Dame, I want to say. And so I just bring it up because Nate Oates is a good tournament coach. For all the criticism that I've had of him, he is good at what he does. And I do have Alabama advancing out into the round of 32. Let's get to the bottom part of the bracket. So I'll say this. We don't know if Tennessee is going to face Miami of Ohio or SMU at this point. Obviously, it's going to be a game that is going to catch everybody's attention. Miami of Ohio and SMU play tonight. Everybody wants to know. It's the first time Miami of Ohio is playing against a power conference team all year. I'll be real. I could see the world where Miami of Ohio gets the win. I don't think SMU is necessarily the worst possible matchup for them. SMU, we mentioned it a minute ago, or we mentioned it on yesterday's show. Miami, they don't have very much size, right? They're a mid-major team. They shoot a lot of threes. They do whatever. SMU isn't very big either. Boopy Miller's their starting point guard. He's one of the best guards in the ACC. We will see, by the way, their third leading scorer, BJ Edwards, if he plays. I just bring it up because I don't think it's the worst matchup for Miami of Ohio. What I do think is, no matter who wins that game, it is going to be a bad matchup to face Tennessee. Tennessee, we know what they are. We know what they're about. They are big. They are physical. They are tough. They defend. And I look specifically at that front court. I look at the front court with, Amari Evans and Jalen Carey and all those big guys down low. I just think that is a very tough matchup for whether it is Miami or SMU. The way that Tennessee plays, they are just so tough. They are just so physical. And of course, they have not only Nate Amen, who we talk about plenty, but Jacoby Gillespie has been playing so well of late that I think it's just going to be a tough matchup for whether it is SMU, whether it is Miami of Ohio. Give me Tennessee to win that game. Let's keep it going. Apparently, I told Matt to put Hofstra over Alabama. We'll get to that in a minute. I will have Alabama winning that game. So we'll get to that in a minute. Virginia against Wright State. If you have big bold takes on Wright State, feel free. Might as well call them Wrong State because Virginia is going to win that game. I have Virginia beating Wright State. Let's get to the moment of truth. Kentucky versus Santa Clara. I said it the day the bracket came out. I said that is going to be a very, very, very tough matchup for Kentucky. And I think that, I give credit to the people who cover Kentucky. I've seen my buddy Brandon Ramsey from KSR. I've seen a lot of the KSR guys kind of acknowledge Santa Clara's got some dudes on that squad. We talked about them the other day, but, the Allen Graves kid, people say he's an NBA player. I don't know that I see NBA player, but really good college player. They have the true 7-footer, Aboyake. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I apologize if his friends or family are listening to this pod. But, they also have the kid Sash. Again, I'm not great with the name. Please forgive me. But Sash, who transferred in from Villanova. They got a lot of dudes, man. At the same time, I am going to, what I'm going to do? I'm going to have hope in Pope. I'm going to believe in Mark Pope to win one NCAA tournament game. I'll be real. It would not shock me if they lost this game. But the one thing about Kentucky is that the second that you presume that they're going to lose some weird game, they find a way to win. They've been doing it all year. They swept Tennessee. They beat Vandy late in the season. They beat Missouri in the SEC tournament. I'm going to have hope in Pope, and I am going to take Kentucky to win this game, where they will play Iowa State. Iowa State is in the bottom part of this bracket. They open against Tennessee State. That's, of course, a team coached by Nolan Smith, the former Duke Blue Devil. I have Iowa State winning. Tennessee State, by the way, a great story. Nolan Smith didn't get that job until, I believe, August. I could be mistaken. I think the head coach took an NBA job. So I have Iowa State beating Tennessee State. So let's get to the round of 32. There is a typo on this, and I blame myself, not Matt. I have Alabama against Texas Tech, but let's keep it going. Michigan versus St. Louis. There is a path. I'll say this. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is a pathway for Michigan to lose to St. Louis because St. Louis shoots a ton of threes and they shoot a really high percentage. If they go, 18 for 27 and Michigan goes 7 for 27, there's a pathway where St. Louis can win that game. I'm not going to predict it, though. I have Michigan advancing to Chicago in the East Regional where they will face Texas again. If you're watching live, the bracket says Hofstra. I do have Alabama beating Hofstra, but I will have Texas Tech beating Alabama. Both teams shoot a lot of threes. Both teams, specifically Texas Tech defends the three ball well. And I just believe in Grant McCaslin. So give me Texas Tech to win that game. Bottom half of the bracket. So Virginia, just a team that we really didn't talk about all that much this season, which is crazy because they went 28-5. And what's really interesting about them is that, one, they shoot the crap out of the basketball. They shoot, they take about as many threes as anybody in college basketball. Let me actually look that up because I have that stat available to me right now. Yeah, 32nd in the country in three-point attempts. And they're also pretty good in the paint with Johan Grunlow and then the other kid, Testa Ritter, who, of course, came in from overseas as well. Here is the issue. Tennessee is one of the best three-point defenses in all of college basketball, top 25 nationally. And you want a crazy stat? This will be the best three-point defense that Virginia has faced all season long, except for Duke, which obviously beat them twice. And so how do you beat Virginia? You have to be tough down low. You have to be able to defend the three-point shot. Well, guess what? Tennessee defends the three ball as well as anybody. They also rebound the crap out of the ball. They're also tough in the paint with all the guys that I mentioned, Jalen Carey and all the guys that they have. Jacoby Gillespie is a phenomenal guard. I'm going to take Tennessee as the 6th seed to advance to the Sweet 16, where, in theory, they could face Kentucky in the Sweet 16 for a second straight year. Sorry, Kentucky fans. I have Iowa State winning that game. Listen, Iowa State's really good. Just one of the more consistent teams all season long. I know that the stats would say they weren't great down the stretch. Listen, they lost to Arizona twice down the stretch. We're not talking about a team that was getting blown out by bad teams. They lost at BYU late. They lost to Arizona. I think the only loss that I would say is bad was losing to Texas Tech at home. But I think Iowa State wins that game pretty comfortably. They just have a toughness that I don't think Kentucky has. And I'm happy to be proven wrong. We'll be doing a Sunday night show. If Kentucky wins that game, I'm happy to eat crow and tell everybody how terrible my picks were. But until then, I do have Kentucky losing that game to Iowa State. Iowa State advancing to the regionals in Chicago, where we are going to get Michigan State versus Texas Tech and Tennessee versus Iowa State. Michigan versus Texas Tech. This is where it ends for Texas Tech. I know Texas Tech shoots a million threes, and the same thing I just said about St. Louis applies to Texas Tech. If Texas Tech can somehow, if they go, again, 19 of 31 from 3, 21 of 31 from 3, 21 of 33, yes, they can win this game. But Michigan is just so much better and so much more physical in the paint than them. I don't see it happening. I don't see this being the place where Michigan loses. So I have Michigan advancing to the Elite Eight. Bottom part of the bracket, Tennessee against Iowa State. Two tough, two physical teams. I actually like Iowa State to advance. Iowa State, just as tough, just as physical. I think Sweet 16 is about the ceiling for Tennessee. Kind of an up and down year. I did like the matchups in the first and second rounds. Don't love the matchup with Iowa State, which leads to our Elite Eight, our final Elite Eight. We have Michigan versus Iowa State. I already have 2 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. It will not be 3. I have Iowa State beating Michigan in the Elite Eight. Listen, and this is something you look at, and this might be good to clip off, Matt. Iowa State just as tough, just as physical as Michigan. I think the X factor. I was thinking about this today. You want a Torres going out on a limb. How about this? Killian Torres is one of the best perimeter defenders in all of college basketball, okay? Why do I bring that up? Imagine putting him on Elliot Cadeau. Listen, I'll say this. I really, when LJ Kaysen, Michigan's backup point guard, got hurt, I kind of sat there and said, is it that big of a deal? Are we overreacting? Are we this? Are we that? The more I watch, the more I do think Michigan is really, they could really use that guy. Let me just put it that way. I think they could really use LJ Kaysen. Instead, he is obviously not available. He was not only their backup point guard, he was pretty much their best three-point shooter as well. And they're a good three-point shooting team, but they're not a great three-point shooting team. So I do have Iowa State beating Michigan to go to the Final Four. And for those of you who are joining us live, my Final Four is as follows. I have St. John's out of the East. I have Florida out of the South. I have Arizona out of the West. And I have Iowa out of the Midwest. Matt, who do we have in the winner of the St. John's, Florida game? You can go ahead and pop that up whenever you're ready, or you can't do it right now, huh? I gave you Florida, right? I went back and forth on that one so much, and I do think I like Florida. St. John's is so tough and so physical down low. By the way, we get St. John's in the Final Four. You talk about a coronation for Rick Pitino taking yet another team to a Final Four. That would be what, his fourth team to a Final Four. Providence, Kentucky, Louisville be his fourth team to a Final Four. What a moment for him. But I will say, I think Florida is about the worst matchup they could face because the physicality and toughness, Florida is bigger. They're more athletic. They're just as tough. I think that's the thing about Florida. And I remember saying this about Florida last year is, you look at Florida and you see Tommy Hawk and you see Alex Condon, and you sit there and think that, well, they must be soft because they look soft. No. It's the exact opposite. They are not soft. They are tough. They are mean. And I think the guards are clearly better at St. John's. It's kind of crazy because St. John's did recruit Xavier Lee. I think he essentially chose Florida over St. John's and Kansas. So that was one that could have gone the other way. Give me Florida to beat St. John's. And then remember, Arizona and Iowa State just played one of the best teams, one of the best games of the season in college basketball in the Big 12 tournament. Jaden Bradley hits that buzzer beater to win that game in the semifinals, send Arizona to the Big 12 championship game where they eventually were able to get the win. Well, I just bring it up because we do have a rematch in the Final Four. Arizona versus Iowa State. Part 3, I like Arizona to win and advance to the national championship game. And in the national championship game, this is kind of fitting. Florida and Arizona, if you remember, that was the first marquee game of the entire season. It was in Las Vegas, opening night. I was there, and Arizona took care of Florida, and it was a big game because obviously Florida at the time was the defending champion and blah, 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 and this and that. Well, I bring it up because what a way to end the season with the game that started the season in Vegas. This one will be in Lucas Oil Stadium on April 6th, that Monday night. Florida going for back-to-back national championships. I'm going to go ahead and take Arizona. Listen, Arizona fans are getting mad at everybody because everybody's picking them. You guys are the best team in college basketball right now. Michigan is down as a key backup. Duke, I think, is down minimum 1, probably 2 starters for parts of the tournament. Nothing's guaranteed. Don't want to promise anything. It's hard not to like Arizona, though. I will have Arizona winning the national championship game over the Florida Gators. That is your official AT national championship. All right. Before we get out of here, Matt, is there any questions or comments from the chat before we get going? It's a long show, man. Georgia has some big SOBs. Good grief. I accidentally walked past the whole team, took a wrong turn at Rupp. Holy cow. Didn't know human beings grew that big. Samto Surreal. Woof. So obviously, Icon Badge GTA is a Kentucky fan. Of course, I think everybody knows, but Samto Surreal was committed to Kentucky before, of course, John Calipari left for Arkansas. And so I just bring it up because they do. They are a really, really, really big team. Give me 1 second, boys. Okay, hold on. So they're a really big team. It would not surprise me if they beat St. Louis because they're so big and they're so athletic. I just don't trust Mike White. Do we remember what happened with Mike White in the NCAA tournament last year? Mike White in Georgia played Gonzaga. It was the no-show of all no-shows in the history of college basketball. I think Georgia was down like 17-0 or something crazy like that. And so I only bring it up because I just don't trust Mike White. But I don't disagree with the sentiment that Georgia is one of the biggest, most physically imposing teams in college basketball. And I mean, look at their wins and losses, right? To the point that the listener just made, they won at Rupp Arena. This is Georgia. They beat Texas late when Texas needed to win. They beat Alabama late when Alabama was rolling. Remember, Alabama had won about 7 or 8 in a row at that point. Earlier in the season, they beat Arkansas. They beat Missouri. They're a good team, but betting on them, taking them, means that you trust Mike White. And I just don't know that I trust Mike White. What else we got? Siren says, people are sleeping on Illinois, who had some of the best wins in the country. Nobody's sleeping on Illinois. They're a really good team. I do worry about how they finish, though. And listen, you can pick apart how they quote-unquote finish because their 2 losses, one was in overtime to UCLA at the buzzer, a Donovan Dent buzzer beater. The other one was to Michigan. So it's hard to sit there and say they played poorly down the stretch, but they lost 2 of their final 4 regular season games and then lost in the opener of the conference tournament. I'll say this. I think it's kind of like a weirdly important tournament for Brad Underwood. Like, it's not like he's going to be fired or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you go ahead and look through, the last couple of years. This is a guy that has had really good teams all season long and then just haven't really come up big in the NCAA tournament. They did have the Elite 8 run a couple years ago with Coleman Hawkins and all them when they lost to UConn, that great 2024 UConn team. But other than that, it is now, let's see here, it's their 6th straight NCAA tournament. They have only made it out of the first weekend once. The best team they probably had was that Ayo Dosunmu team when Ayo Dosunmu decided to come back to college. This was, of course, when Ayo Dosunmu could have gone pro but didn't go pro. So yeah, I don't know. I like him. I just don't know that I totally trust him. 1 or 2 more. Jay Springs says, back the A, back the Torres, back the Mike Luke. Arizona fans are in the chat. They have arrived. By the way, Arizona fans, if you do get to Indianapolis, we're going to be doing some live shows. You guys are going to have to swing by. We'll have to introduce ourselves. I love Arizona fans. Mike Luke, by the way, has agreed to do a live show with me in Indy if we get that far. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, shout out to all the Arizona fans. Great team. I know what's at stake this March for people, and I'm not trying to put it out there. I'm just stating facts. Arizona has not made a Final Four since 2001. Obviously, their only national championship came in 1997, but it is worth noting that one national championship did come in Indianapolis. So 29 years later, let's see if Arizona can do it again. Really quickly, 1 or 2 more. Andrew brings up a great point. And this annoyed me. If you listen to Sunday's show, I talked about how I believe that nobody got more screwed than St. John's. Now, you can argue UConn got screwed as well, but I said no one got more screwed than St. John's. They got to fly across country. They're in the East region. They were a 5. They could have been a 4. But also, the team that they just beat to win the Big 12, Big East regular season and conference tournament, they could potentially have to play in the Elite 8. And so you can argue that UConn got screwed too, but UConn, I mean, they didn't beat St. John, so Andrew says it's obviously the committee doesn't want the Big East to win, putting St. John's and UConn in the same region. I don't know that it's that deep, but I do. And again, this goes to the point that I routinely bring up. What do I always say? I say we need to stop playing conference championship games on Sunday. And I know the Big East plays on Saturday, but give the committee all day Sunday to just look at the bracket and say, is this the best we can do? Is there something that's missing here? Is there something we can do differently? And I would argue the 2 things that if I was in charge of the committee, I would have changed. I think it is wildly unfair to ask Arkansas to go to Portland and play an early game on Thursday when they played in the SEC championship game on Sunday. By the way, there was a Friday regional in Tampa. Alabama's the 4 seed. All you got to do is flip them. Arkansas gets the extra day and less travel for the SEC champion, okay? And then the other thing is St. John's and UConn should not be in the same bracket. Now, I know there's no bracketing principle that says they can't be there, and I know each team has to win 3 games before we get the 4th matchup, but it is kind of nonsense, right? I mean, imagine if Arizona and Iowa State were in the same region, people would be pissed off. If Duke and Carolina were 2 of the top 10 teams by the end of the year, or top 15 teams or whatever, and they were playing in the Elite 8, people would be pissed off. And so I bring it up because I think Andrew actually brings up a great point. Andrew, I don't know if you're a UConn fan or a St. John's fan, but either way, it's a great point by you. Total nonsense. Really quickly, we'll get to a few more questions in a minute. One more plug, Survivor Pool. Make sure you sign up. Okay, so Survivor Pool, you want a chance to compete against me for thousands of dollars in cash prizes this March. Go ahead, click that AT Survivor Pool. All you got to do, click that QR code. It takes you to our landing page, and it's pretty simple. Compete against me, thousands in cash prizes. Last year, our winner won well over $1,000 in prizes, and all you got to do is sign up, and it's really simple. You enter, you compete. All you have to do is pick one team every single day. The catch, of course, is that you cannot pick the same team twice. So if you like UConn to make a Final Four, you like Arizona, you like St. John's, remember, you probably don't want to use them the first day of the tournament because you're going to need them later on. So make sure to sign up for the Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool. We have just under 60 entries right now, well over 1,000 in cash prizes. I think we can easily get to 100 entries before it's all said and done. We appreciate your support, but compete against me. What's more fun than that? Taking my money, taking my hard-earned money. We appreciate your support. All right. Anything else before we get out of here, Matt? Click that QR code. Like I said, that was a long show, man. That show kicked my you-know-what. Super chat. Stut Joe says, cats love Torres. What if I was just doing it all for super chats? I'm not. I love Arizona. Stut Joe, and to all the Arizona fans that are in the chat, enjoy this March, man. Teams like this don't come around very long. We will see what happens once the games actually get played. Special team and special season. And I hope to hang out with a lot of you in Indianapolis. I really do, because Arizona's in the midst of a special season. Listen, I think that Sweet 16 game, whether it's Arkansas or Wisconsin, is going to be a challenge. But it's not the worst draw you could have gotten. And, I'm excited to watch I'm as excited to watch Arizona as anybody in this tournament, because they're just so darn fun to watch. So many guys that can beat you. Awesome team. Incredible regular season, by the way. They beat Florida, won at UConn, won at Houston, beat Houston in the Big 12 tournament, beat Kansas in the Big 12 tournament. No, they didn't beat Kansas in the Big 12 tournament. Beat Iowa State twice, beat UCLA. On and on. Unbelievable season for Arizona. Thank you, Stut Joe, for your support as always. Anything else? Maybe I'll do a quick scroll through the chat. My sources tell me Duke will exit early, according to Andrew. Is your source the Aaron Torres pod? Because I have Duke losing in the Sweet 16. And I'm not like, I think every time Duke loses, it's an indictment on John Shire or the program or this or that. It's a tough draw. And I think, sick brag here, but I was on Colin Cowherd's show on Tuesday. Jason McIntyre was filling in for Colin, but I said I think Patrick Gongba, I don't think we appreciate how much pressure he takes off Cam Boozer on the defensive side of the court. In other words, he's the guy that has to guard the other team's 5. So, when they played Carolina, it would be Henry Visar. When they played Arkansas doesn't have great 5s, but we don't have to go there. So imagine Cam Boozer having to guard Zuby Ejiofor one-on-one. Terrace Reed, who's probably got 40 pounds on Cam Boozer, could not guard Zuby Ejiofor one-on-one. And so I just bring it up because I just think that's a bad matchup for Duke. Your sources are maybe this show, but I too have Duke losing early in this tournament, at least relatively speaking, in the Sweet 16. Should mention, by the way, this is what I need you guys to do. Later on tonight, we are doing our behind the scenes tour of the Circus Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs. They took us on the tour for an hour. Come back at 8 p.m. Eastern while that first NCAA tournament game is going on. Check out what we did. It was awesome. It was fun. Need you to come back, like that video. If you want to, by the way, if you want to do me a favor right now, like this video as well. But I'll tell you what, I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Come back at 5 p.m. or at 8 p.m. Eastern for that video. And then other than that, it's time for us to go. Thank you all for listening. I've said it a million times. I promise to stop after this time. Make sure to sign up for our Survivor pool. You can win thousands of dollars in cash prizes, all from me. Take all my money. It's okay. I won't take it personal. Appreciate your support. Time for me to go. I will be back Thursday night. So after the opening round of the NCAA tournament, probably 11:30 Eastern time, we'll come back. We will do a show tomorrow reacting to the full day one of the NCAA tournament. Who wins? Where do they win? All of that. By the way, Andrew with a couple quick things. He says, great show, Aaron. Thank you, Andrew. We appreciate your support. He said, last year, all 4 number 1 seeds made the Final Four. Second time in tournament history. Absolutely. I agree. I don't think we get that this year, though. All right. I'm going to go. I think that's it. We're going to roll. Appreciate everybody's support. We are going to roll. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. Sign up. Survivor pool. I've told you a million times. And until then, we will be back Thursday night.